Hi, and welcome to Anderson Business Advisors. Well, by now you've received your corporate binder, and you're probably totally overwhelmed. Well, don't be. Today we'll go through the binder section by section. So by the time we get to the end, I'm sure you'll feel far more comfortable with the documents that you're looking at. So let's get started. If you open the binder, the first thing you're going to see is a welcome letter. It's essentially congratulating you on your new entity. However, it is very important that you read the letter thoroughly. In some cases, the letter will have a paragraph that is typed out in bold print that is designed to catch your attention. Depending on the state that you are living in, there may be further filings that you will have to complete. Alternatively, it may simply state that you have to file an annual report with the Secretary of State each year. If that's the case, then our office will be in contact with you approximately 30 days prior to that report being due. That will allow us enough time to collect the funds from you and make the payment so that you can avoid any late fees. If you have any questions regarding the instructions in this letter, simply contact your law coordinator and he or she will assist you. This next document, called the Statement of Location of Stock and Unit Ledger, will only appear in your binder if your entity was created in either the state of Nevada or the state of Wyoming. You will also notice that we have included a return envelope for you to send back the original signed share certificates once you complete them. It is imperative that we keep those certificates in our office for safekeeping. In lieu of that, you will complete this form and keep it in your binder, as it will indicate where those original certificates are being held. The second page is a title page. It will have the name of your corporation, the state in which it was formed, and your employer identification number. If the number is not typed in, simply fill it in for quick reference. Immediately following this, you're going to see a table of contents. It is a table of contents of the tabs in your binder. You will notice the first set of tabs are green, and the second set are blue. Today we're going to deal with the green tabs as they need to be dealt with immediately. The blue tabs you can deal with at a later date. So let's go to the State Filings tab. Here you will see your articles of incorporation in a clear plastic sleeve. If they are not there, don't panic. It's not uncommon for us to forward the binder to you in advance while we wait to receive the articles. In order to retrieve them, you are going to want to go to box.com, use the email address that you have on file with us. It will prompt you to create a password if you haven't done so already, and once you are in there, you're going to look for viewable client documents. There you should see filed articles. If they're not there today, check back in a couple of days as they should be there shortly. Once you identify them, print them and add them to this section of the binder. For our purposes, we have articles of incorporation for a Nevada entity. In the top right corner, we have a document identification number. Below that, the date the articles were filed, and then an assigned entity number. It will list the name of the company, the registered agent, how many shares the company will have to issue, and the name and address of the board of directors and/or trustee. Now keep in mind, this is one of the documents the bank will want to see when you go to open your corporate bank account. The following page has additional information. It states the president, the secretary, the treasurer, and the director. Next, we have a corporate charter certificate. And finally, we have a certified copy. Now don't be alarmed if your articles do not look at all like ours. Each state is unique on how they will lay their articles out. However, there will be some consistent information. There will always be the date the articles were filed, the assigned entity number, you will see the name of the corporation, the registered agent, and the number of shares the corporation will have to issue. And in some cases, you will see the particulars about the officers. The next tab we're going to go to is the IRS Filings tab. Here you will see the Form SS4. This is the IRS application for an employer identification number. Now we complete this form before we go online to obtain your EIN number. If you look at it, in the top right corner, it will have your EIN number typed in. If it's not there, you can simply fill it in for quick reference. You will see the name of the company, the address of the company, and the name of the responsible party. It will also state what kind of company you've created. Halfway down the page, you will see the closing month of the accounting year. Now, we are not required to submit this to the IRS, but they do want us to make sure we have a copy on file. Approximately a couple of weeks after we go online to get your EIN number, the IRS is going to send you a formal letter. The letter will have your employer identification number on it, and it will also state, about halfway down the page, what tax return the corporation will need to file. You will see that we have included for you a screenshot from the irs.gov website with the EIN number that we obtained for you. Following the SS4, you will see a Form 1120. This is the U.S. Corporation Income Tax Return Form. Now, please don't complete it. We have only put it here so that you would have it to reference, to give you a good understanding of the document that you will have to file when it comes to tax time. Here you have the organizational meeting. Now, keep in mind, corporations are required to have an annual shareholder meeting to appoint the directors and an annual directors meeting to appoint the officers. Now, when we initially set your company up, we have a one-time meeting called an organizational meeting. That meeting will encompass both your first shareholder meeting and your first directors meeting. Therefore, you will have had your first set of meetings. The first page is an informational page. You will see it says the shareholder information, the name of the shareholder, the number of shares issued, the type of shares, what they were issued for, and if they are voting or non-voting. Below that, it has the initial director information and the initial officer information. Here, it will list their names and the positions of which they will be holding. Next, you will see the business address. Now, this may or may not be a mailing address. Below that is the registered agent address. Now, this is definitely not a mailing address. The registered agent is required by the Secretary of State. They want to know that every entity created has a physical address within the state to receive service of process. That means if there are any legal documents to be served on the company, they want a physical address available. Next, it has the date of incorporation. Now, if you do not have your articles of incorporation and your date has not been filled in, come back and fill it in by hand. Below that is your fiscal year end and your tax status. You will also have the annual tax return form that you will need to file. As you can see, it is the Form 1120, which we saw in the IRS filings, and your tax return due date. The next thing you'll see is the organizational meeting table of contents. Now, this table of contents is a little more extensive, simply because we are putting some resolutions into place at the onset of your company. Then we have actions by incorporator. This is our office signing off to say we prepared your legal documents. Next, we have the minutes of the organizational meeting. Now, every time the company has a meeting, it does have to have meeting minutes prepared. In this case, the first paragraph will state where the meeting was held, the date, and the time, what directors attended, and then it says that the articles of incorporation have been approved. It addresses the compensation of directors. Now, directors do not receive salary, however, they are entitled to be reimbursed for any reasonable out-of-pocket expenses. Following that, it states stock has been issued, identifying who received it and how much. The election of officers has been made. The bylaws have been enacted. Now, the bylaws are in the next tab, which we will sign today if you haven't signed already. Your resident agent is identified, and your business address is listed. Here, it addresses reimbursement of startup costs. Keep in mind, startup costs include any expenses you incurred prior to the date of incorporation. For many of you, that will include your educational expenses. We encourage you to keep accurate records, not simply recording one lump sum. Break down the specifics of your transactions. Next, we have the fiscal year. In our case, it is March 31st. Actions taken by Andersons has been approved. That's your legal documentation. Your business purpose is anything lawful. However, keep in mind, you have probably met with an advisor and your documents have been prepared with a business purpose in mind. If you do change your business purpose drastically, please contact our office to ensure you have the appropriate documentation in place. Preparation of appropriate corporate books. Essentially, we're doing that right now. Your mileage reimbursement. This is important. You want to log all the miles you travel on behalf of the corporation. You can do this in either a log book or download a popular app. Conducting business. You can conduct business in any of the United States. You are identified as a small business corporation. Here we have the Section 1244. We put this into place in case you decide to close the corporation down at some point, in which case we highly recommend you contact our office so that we can assist you to ensure that you complete the process in the most tax-efficient way. And if possible, you may qualify for a Section 1244, which would allow you to convert any current losses into a possible stock loss. Next, we have banking resolution. Of course, you can open a bank account, borrow, you can borrow money, payment of all fees and expenses to incorporate. This is often referred to as organizational costs. That would be what you paid Anderson to create your corporate entity. Authorization to establish employee benefits plan. You may at some point want your corporation to sponsor a qualified retirement plan. Authorization to establish employee wellness plan. Hiring of employees. And finally, ratification of prior actions. This simply states that all the actions you have taken prior to the date of incorporation will fall under the rules and guidelines of these legal documents. And finally, the directors must sign. Now we must put into place and sign the resolutions we spoke of. First, we have the resolution of the Board of Directors to open a corporate bank account. Then we have a resolution of the Board of Directors to issue shares. Resolution of the Board of Directors for reimbursement of medical care expenses. Now this is very important. Starting the date of incorporation, once the corporation makes money, it can reimburse you for any out-of-pocket medical, dental, and vision expenses you may have for yourself and your dependents. And in some cases, this may include your medical premiums. Now we have something called a revolving line of credit agreement. There are 3 documents to this. We are simply signing them today and keeping them in your binder. This will support any transactions whereupon you loan the company money and the company can pay you back with interest. You will notice in the agreement, in the first paragraph, the company is identified as the borrower and you are identified as the lender. The president of the company will sign and then the lender or lenders will sign. The next document is a promissory note. You will notice in the top left corner the figure of $150,000 is there. That does not mean that you have to put $150,000 into the corporate bank account. This is simply a figure to state that these documents support transactions up to that amount. However, if you do loan the company more money, we would simply put another promissory note in place for the difference. And finally, this document is the Board of Directors approving the agreement. Now, keep in mind, every meeting the company has, not only does it need to have meeting minutes prepared, it must always have a waiver of notice. Corporations are required to give substantial notice of a company meeting. And in order to avoid the excess paperwork, we have put into place a one-page document called a waiver of notice. You are not waiving the meeting, you are simply waiving all the notification. Next, you have the acceptance of appointment as director. Then you will have acceptance of appointment as director if there's additional directors. Otherwise, you will then have acceptance of appointment for officers. In our case, we only have 2 individuals. Therefore, each individual is holding 2 positions. This is for president and treasurer. And here is one for the vice president and the secretary. You may have 4 individual papers. Here you have the company bylaws, and it is imperative that you read these thoroughly, as they will outline what you can and cannot do as you run your company. Today, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the table of contents, just to give you an idea of what you can expect to find. Article 1 will talk about the offices and the record. Here, it'll identify who your registered agent is and what their address is, what the corporate office address is, and where the books and records will be held. Article 2 will talk about the shareholders. Now, since the shareholders are the owners and don't typically participate in the day-to-day activity, their involvement is largely through meetings. Therefore, this section will address the different types of meetings, how they are handled, and generally the process. Article 3 will talk about the board of directors. Now, the board of directors oversees how the company is run. Here, it will address what the powers of the board are, the meetings that they may have and how they should be run, what to do if you have a vacancy, and what to do if a member resigns. Article 4 is specific to the officers. Now, the officers do run the day-to-day activity of your company. Here, it will talk about the term of their office, how to remove an officer, how to appoint one, what their compensation can be, and generally what the duties of each officer are. Article 5, you have indemnification. These are circumstances in which you will act on behalf of the company, but you will not be held personally liable. Article 6 deals with the stock certificates. It will tell you how to issue certificates, how to transfer shares, and it will tell you what to do if one is lost or destroyed. Article 7 is specific to corporate finance, and it deals with the surplus of capital. Here, it gives the company the ability to pay dividends. Article 8 deals with general provisions. If you decide you want to change your fiscal year end, it talks about contracts with officers or directors or their affiliates, amendments, reimbursements, and finally we have Article 9, which is your signature certificate. You will notice that the bylaws are signed by the secretary of the company. Now we will go to the next tab, the first of the blue tabs, and that is the shareholder meeting. As I mentioned earlier, the shareholders must have a meeting once a year, called the annual shareholder meeting. This meeting will appoint the directors. Once you identify your fiscal year end, either the month or the following month from your fiscal year end, you will have those meetings. Even if nothing's changed, you will simply reappoint the same people to directors' positions and officers. We've provided for you a template. First, you will have the table of contents. Then you have the minutes of the annual meeting of the shareholders. Complete the template as required. The first paragraph will have the date, time, and location of the meeting. It will identify who was present, specifics about the shareholders, who was nominated for the position of directors, and who was elected. You will date and sign. The next, of course, is a waiver of notice for the annual shareholder meeting. Remember, we must have one for every meeting. Following that, we have the appointments. Your binder probably provided you with 4 blank appointments. Again, make sure you make photocopies moving forward. Now we have what's called the minutes of the special shareholder meeting. Even though the company is required only to have the one shareholder meeting a year, there are times throughout the year where you'll feel it's imperative that the shareholders attend a meeting. In that case, this will be the template that you will use. Again, the first paragraph, you simply fill in the date, time, and location, the specifics about the shareholders, who attended, and what was discussed and or decided. Then you will sign and date. And of course, we have a waiver of notice of the special shareholder meeting. The next tab will deal with the directors' meetings. Remember, the directors appoint the officers. So here we have the table of contents. Now we have the minutes of the annual meeting of the Board of Directors. Again, the first paragraph will identify the date, time, and location, who attended, who was nominated for the various officer positions, and who was ultimately chosen. Sign and date. And complete the waiver of notice for the annual meeting of the Board of Directors. Now you will have your acceptance for each of the positions: President, Vice President, Treasurer, and Secretary. Now we have the minutes of the special meeting of the Board of Directors. Now, since the Board of Directors oversees how the company is run, you may find that you have frequent meetings throughout the year to discuss big decisions, any accomplishments, any current goals or investments, or any changes. And specifically, if you are taking advantage of the Section 288 monthly meetings, this is the template that you would use. The first paragraph again will list the date, time, and location of the meeting, who attended, and then you will fill in what was discussed and or decided. Of course, there's a waiver of notice that will accompany it. Now you will have a few resolutions that you do need to sign today. You will see they're dated and your name has been typed in. We have the resolution of the Board of Directors to reimburse expenses, the resolution of the Board of Directors authorizing reimbursement of purchases, the resolution of the Board of Directors authorizing purchases, the resolution of the Board of Directors authorizing the reimbursement of actual travel and entertainment expenses of officers. Now we are going to go to the next tab, which is the Stock and Ledger tab. Here, you will see your share certificates. In the top left corner, you will see the number of the certificate. In the top right, you will see the number of shares being issued. The middle will state the company's name, the total number of shares the company has, and then the individual or entity who is receiving the shares. It will need to be dated and signed by both the President and the Secretary. If you hold both positions, you will sign it twice. On the back of each certificate, you will notice an area that could be filled in. You are not going to do that today. You would only do that if you are transferring this particular share certificate. The second certificate you see will have the number 2 in the top left corner, again the number of shares issued on the right, the name of the company, the total number of shares, the individual or entity receiving them, and of course will need to be signed and dated. Now, depending on how many people are in your company, you may only require one certificate or you may require several. Generally, we do include a few extra certificates in your binder, so you have them if you need them moving forward. Here you will see a blank certificate. It will of course have the number of the certificate in the top left, but everything else will need to be filled in. The next thing you'll see is your ledger. Keep in mind the ledger is only to document any transactions having to do with the certificates. Today we are simply going to open the ledger, look in the top left corner, and confirm the information is accurate. We should have the name of the individual or the entity receiving the certificate, the place of residence, the date, the number of the certificate, the number of shares, and if they were original. The next tab we're going to go to is the Business License tab. Here we have a Nevada State business license. Since our entity was created in Nevada, Nevada does require every entity to obtain a business license. However, in most cases, you may have no documents behind this tab, simply because we leave it up to each client to obtain their business license. We do that because they are not only state-specific, they are often city and or county-specific. So once you identify if you need a license, this is the tab that you will want to keep it in for safekeeping. The last tab in your binder is the Miscellaneous tab. You will see that we've got and put into place for you a few additional resolutions. This is here just in case you need them moving forward. However, under this tab, you can keep any other documents you may have that you just want to have somewhere for safekeeping. The first 2 pages you will notice is the notice of meeting. This is the more extensive version that we are not using since we have the waiver of notice. Then you will see you have the resolution of the Board of Directors for the approval of the issuance of shares, authorization of corporate account and designation, consent to action without a meeting, resignation of a director, and the acceptance of appointment of officer. Well, that concludes our corporate binder review. Now, I'm hoping you're feeling a little more comfortable with all those documents. However, I do recognize it's a great deal of information to take in at one time. So I want to remind you that you have a terrific team here at Anderson's. We're here to help you be successful, so if you have any questions, please feel free to contact our office, and we are more than happy to help. I do want to thank you for choosing Anderson's to help you set up your asset protection, and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you and have a great day.